Awesome. Well, okay, we can get started. Thank you everyone so much for coming today and sharing your lovely Sunday with us. My name is Elaine Waterman. I am the Executive Director here at the Firehouse Art Center, and I wanted to welcome you all here. The Firehouse is a nonprofit art center in the heart of downtown Longmont on 4th and Kaufman, providing life-enhancing art experiences through art exhibitions, art education, and cultural events. Our Artist Talks are casual chats with artists, curators, members of the creative community, and creative entrepreneurs with a focus on how to build community within the arts. Firehouse Artist Talks give the community a chance to ask questions and get to a deeper level with the art on our walls. We are taping this talk, and you can find it on our YouTube channel, along with our past Artist Talks and presentations. Our next talk is scheduled for March 12th with the Skyline Visual and Performing Academy high school students who will be exhibiting their capstone portfolios in our South Gallery during March. I just wanted to start with a couple of updates for the Firehouse Art Center and just before we get started. So life drawing is tomorrow. We have our life drawing class on Mondays from 6 to 8, as well as the last Sunday of the month. We have yoga here in the gallery every Wednesday. And Songwriters Meetup is on Tuesday this week, as well as Poetry Night is Friday. And Play with Clay is our clay hand building class, and that will be Thursday of this week. I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors, the LDDA, Longmont Creative District, Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Longmont Community Foundation, the Community Foundation of Boulder, the Boulder County Arts Alliance, and to Colorado Creative Industries. We couldn't connect our community to creative and life-changing art experiences without your help. If you would like to donate to support our programming and exhibits, please visit our website at firehouseart.org. And lastly, in the spirit of healing, the Firehouse acknowledges and honors the Arapaho tribe, the original people of the land upon which the Firehouse sits. We also wish to acknowledge all other indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. It is because of their hardships and sacrifice that we are able to be here sharing this art with you today, and the Firehouse believes that we can only grow when we have a better appreciation for the history, legacy, and contributions that the tribes have made, not just to this region, but to the nation. I'm so excited to be here today with artists Nancy Eastman, Alicia, McKim, and Patricia Aaron. I just wanted to give a little background on the residency and bios, and then we'll get to the artists, the reason that you are here. So the Firehouse Art Center hosts a summer and winter residency each year, working in the South Gallery for 3 months before a culminating solo exhibition in the main gallery. The artist-occupied program at the Firehouse Art Center is intended as a professional development opportunity for emerging and experienced visual artists, where we hope it will bring the artist's work to a new creative level as we also connect our visitors to working artist environments and processes. So Nancy Eastman was our winter artist in residence for this year, and she is a second-generation Coloradan who has resided here for more than half a century. During that time, she has witnessed Colorado's evolving suburban landscape and changing agricultural, ranching, and rural identities, something that is strongly reflected in the work created during this residency. She creates 2- and 3-dimensional works from observation and memory of the landscape, and the land subtleties in both near and distant views reflect our past human presence. Her goal is to involve the viewer in the aesthetics of our common heritage and create a link between the community's people, their landscape, agriculture, and history. Our residents also have an opportunity to curate the South Gallery for their culminating exhibit, and for that, Nancy reached out to Alicia Kim and Diane Dio, who could not be here today. Alicia McKim incorporates traditional printmaking and letterpress processes with alternative techniques to facilitate her prints and artist books. Much of her work focuses on written language and its intricate system of codes and constructs that are woven into contemporary society. She exhibits her artist books and prints internationally, and her work is in numerous private and public collections, including the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Getty Artist Book Collection, the Walker Art Center, and the Harvard Printing and Graphics Collection. Her work has been published in 500 Handmade Books, Volume 2, Bound and Lettered, and Calligraphy Review magazines. Alicia is also an associate professor at the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and she is a founding member of MoPrint, the month of printmaking in Colorado. And Patricia Aaron, born in Youngstown, Ohio, is best known for her gestural abstract landscapes composed of rich layers of encaustic pigments and mixed media applied to custom birch panels in her signature style painting technique. Aaron's paintings fuse the raw beauty of nature, earthscapes, and urban culture. Aaron's paintings are reflective, pure, and honest, often embedded with a rich narrative. So, just a little background before we get started with some of the questions, and it's the reason that I have the water here. So it's a lot of talking. But thank you for being here for our artist talk. And I guess I just wanted to start with you first, Nancy, just to talk about your residency and kind of see how that experience has been.
Well, I think the thing that was most interesting is the people that came in are kind of new to Longmont in the last 3 or 4 years. And some of them were creative people and other, they were doing creative things. But they all just talked about how much they loved Longmont. And I thought that was really interesting that they were so open about how they love Longmont. And the residency, my studio feels very small now after working in this big studio. The light has been wonderful that has come in the afternoon. I could only work about 3 to 4 hours before I felt like I was at a stopping point. So I came in every day to create what I could create. And the other thing that was interesting about the residency was experimenting with, collaborating with my friend's friend who did these paintings and poetry and worked on those pieces and integrated them into my art, stitching them together. And so I experimented more, I probably worked larger on these pieces that I would normally not do. It was fun to do the environmental pieces kind of again that I hadn't done in about 8 years, and I liked sort of the 3-dimensional effect with the 2-dimensional.
Could you speak just a tiny bit louder?
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I think I'm done with that one.
And so part of the residency is that there is an interaction with the community, and how did you involve the community in the residency for your?
Well, how I started involved that was with this piece, where I went around and took photographs or observed or drew elements that were in Longmont, that are in the community of Longmont. And then I also involved the community in terms of finding a friend of mine who's an artist has a studio in Longmont. So I created the wrapped stick piece in her studio to get started, because my work takes a long time to do, so I knew there was no way I could produce it all in 3 months to fill the gallery. And I had found sticks on her land, and she's a Longmont citizen, and then the same thing with the iron pieces. I found them on vacant lots in Longmont. So in that way I felt like I was involving the Longmont community.
Mm-hmm. And then, so this piece, you pulled the inspiration for the quilted. So how did this part?
The workshop?
Yes.
Yeah, so in doing this and stitching this together in my landscape architectural background was to have the people come in and bring a photograph of their house or a house they would like to live in and create a landscape around it, how they would beautify Longmont.
Very cool. And so you had just mentioned, and I think I pulled this from your bio, you're a landscape architect as well. So you have a long history of working with the land in terms of how people live in it. how did you see, so the exhibit title for your residency was Connecting Community through Abstraction. And it was really, I mean, how would you phrase it in terms of the community and the history and kind of stitching that together?
Well, I went to the Longmont Museum, and there's a book on Longmont that I read thoroughly and went through, that its background is sort of a factory town, and took the old pictures and really studied and looked at it, and then also about the indigenous people that were here and what they contributed. And I just started looking at different aspects of how I could express that in my art. And then also I was really aware of wherever I drove around in Longmont, you just get this incredible view of Longs Peak. And so I did a piece that kind of represented the Longs Peak and the railroad tracks and just this small plains town that it is.
Great. And this is actually a great lead-in to your work because when you curated the South Gallery, you were kind of working on what that would be, and you brought the works of Alicia and Patricia together, the monoprints that they did regarding Wyoming and dealing with the land, through their processes.
Right.
But Patricia and Alicia, I wanted to ask you a question. So you were inspired by a quote by Willa Cather, and the quote, it was about Wyoming, right?
Well,
Yes.
it's from this book. I don't think it's directly related to Wyoming. It's the plains,
Plains.
the prairie.
So the quote is, "The light air about me told me that the world ended here. Only the ground and sun and sky were left. And if one went a little farther, there would be only sun and sky, and one would float off into them." And I wanted to bring in that quote because you were talking about being inspired by Longs Peak, and then how this leads directly into you guys finding inspiration with that quote, and also the landscape of Wyoming. Do you often find inspiration in literature when you work?
I listen to many books when I work in my studio, and some books inspire me more than others. Some are mysteries or crime novels or something that don't really inspire me. They're just kind of background noise. But this book in particular, I just brought the book so you can see it. I've listened to many times, and I found it a wonderful book to make art in conjunction.
And I do use literature a lot just because I have worked so much with language that it just makes perfect sense that you're going to use something.
And then your idea when bringing these works into the South Gallery, you titled the collection of Diane's work with Alicia's and Patricia's Textured. And it was inspired by the land and people on it. And I really feel like, I was looking into Cather's work, and I really feel like she derived so much of her subject matter from the pioneers that lived on the Great Plains, that it was just such a wonderful tie-in, what you wanted to bring in about the people that live on the land and how it affects them, but then also how they affect the land.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting how their work looks like, open space and land and sort of the letter looking symbols, how that ties in with how we write about the land, how we sing about the land, and how we observe the land.
Mm-hmm. And to those of you that are watching this as a YouTube presentation or a video presentation, after this talk, the people that are here will get to walk around and experience the artwork, but we will put visual images after the talk so that you know what we are actually talking about. So I wanted to talk a little bit, Nancy, about the found items that you use, particularly the sculptural element that is hanging right above Patricia's head. We tied it very securely, it will not fall. But yes, what is that?
Well, the chicken wire, you always see chicken wire on farms or ranches. There's always a roll of it somewhere. So that's where I collected it. And it was rolled up. And I just thought about, usually little hobby farms or whatever, or people have chickens and they have wire around for ranching or whatever. So I just decided to wrap the chicken wire in a lot of different colors, and it really has a beauty of itself in sunlight. And then the other kind of repurposed iron pieces that I did, one was sort of in cow colors to represent a cow fence, and then the tall piece was sort of in colors that I felt that Native Indians might use and what they would, how they got their dyes. And so it was trying to connect just what people do for work and what they did to make a living and bring that in. Because I think that's sort of a forgotten element. I think as the land becomes developed, then we just think it's suburbs and cars, and we sort of forget about food and agriculture and history and how important it is that developed a community.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely see that when we look at this piece that you stitched together, because there are so many representations of animals and landscape, but then you have these buildings and a map with the street system, and just kind of how that intermeshes together. And I was saying to you when I first saw that, and we kind of had it stood up, the one sculptural element, it looks like a street pattern.
Yes.
Yes.
People have said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I think that's even better. That's an interpretation.
Yeah, so it's
what
like
I came up with.
taking those agricultural elements and using your process and technique to wrap them in those colors, and then it turns into this like what people try and do to the land. They like try and structure it and make it so that it fits more into what their neighborhood is. Yeah. So you had mentioned that your space in your studio at home now seems a little small. Mm-hmm. What do you think as far as like residencies and creating in a different space, how did that affect your work? Did that give you...
Well, I think you just experiment more, and you really push yourself to produce something that's worthy of the space, worthy of, having a residency, being honored to be able to do that. And also work, bigger. I mean, I wouldn't have produced these pieces if I didn't feel there was some place to put them or had a studio big enough to work in for them.
Definitely. And Patricia, I know that you I know that you have mentioned that you've done residencies as well, but they're a little bit different because you get to travel. Where have your residencies been?
I'm very inspired by traveling. My work is inspired by traveling. I most recently was in Iceland for 6 weeks last spring, and so I've had 4 residencies in Iceland. It's, I guess, my favorite place. And other places are, scattered, Ireland and France and things. But I just think it's a time, an opportunity, it's a gift. And I become, when I go there, Iceland is very quiet. And it's very full of natural elements and very raw and just glaciers and icebergs and just beautiful. I become very introspective. And so I draw from that, and I create work that I wouldn't normally do in my studio here, just because of what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, the language, the culture is so different, everything just kind of all comes out, and the people I meet. So I typically take a few days to get settled in, and then I guess I could equate it to like being a journalist in bed in the community in which I'm working, and they're always different, very small little communities, and I go out and I meet people, meet the locals, and one person will talk about one thing like fishing, trawling boats or something, and that'll lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and before I know I've met lots of people, and it's wonderful. And by the end of 6 weeks, you know, people are coming over to the studio, they invited me to their house, and that's just part of it. It's just and you find out so much of it's a very rich experience. So it's
And so do you create, because you're an encaustic
Yes.
artist.
yes.
Do you bring all of your supplies and create there? Or?
When I'm overseas, it's different with the electrical sourcing,
Oh.
and I need electricity for the most part. But I think I've got that down now in Iceland. I've found these little electrical kind of George Foreman type, that's not really what they are, griddles that flatten out totally. And so I need a heat source. And so I can paint, but typically when I'm overseas, I'll work on print, so work on paper.
Okay. So can you kind of define what encaustic?
Encaustic, so I work with warm pigmented beeswax, and it's colored, so as you see in there. And when I'm overseas, I'll take paper, or I'll buy paper there, whatever they have, and set it up. So there's depending on the plates that I bring, I do have to bring plates, anodized aluminum plates, and those are smooth on top and get heated to about 180 degrees. And then I can use the wax to come in different forms, sticks or things that I make, and I work directly on the anodized plate. And then I have rubber tools so you don't scratch the plate, kind of drawing into it, and then put the paper down, rub the back with a baron, pick it up. And you can do that repeatedly and add ink to it, mix media, all kinds of different things. So, you know, that's kind of a shortened process.
And then when you're in your studio, how is that process different?
In the studio, I work much larger. You know, the paintings are sometimes 5 by 5, 6 by 6, 6 by, I just finished 15 feet long. And those are inspired by travel, but I can't do those overseas.
Yeah.
So I bring that all back in my head, and I have all the panels prepped before I leave. And then I come back and I just kind of fall into them for weeks and paint. And it's a much larger situation in the studio. It's they're called hot boxes. If you were to go online and want to order one, they're basically a box. It's electrical and has 4 100-watt light bulbs in it. That creates the heat and anodized aluminum plate on top. And you wait about half an hour for the temperature to rise. And then I can work, I have aluminum pans that are filled with molten wax and my paint brushes, and I work right to the panels like this, back and forth. And the word encaustic means to burn in, to fuse, so you have to have a heat source. Once your encaustic is now on the brush and then on your panel, you have to have a way to burn that in, to fuse that into the layer below it. So it's a very, it takes a lot of time. I don't worry about it anymore, that's what I do. So, and you burn it in either with a torch, and that's what I use, or a heat gun. And then you wait for it to cool. So if I'm working on a big painting, I can work on this part over here while this part's cooling and so forth. Yeah.
Very cool. And then moving on to processes, Alicia, this is not the first time that we've had the honor of sharing your work. We did have a piece here in March of 2019 for Mo Print Month, or Month of Printmaking, and it was actually right when we shut down for the pandemic. So there was actually a fantastic artist talk with Brandy Coons, who was the curator of the Firehouse at the time, because we had moved all online, and so we did this Zoom artist talk. So I will link to that in the comments. But can you explain what letterpress is to those who may not have experience with this, printing medium?
Absolutely. So letterpress, it's the educator in please forgive me. That letterpress is basically what Gutenberg invented in the 1450s, right? And at that time it was large piece of type. So he was working with lead. I'm going to pass this around. This is a composing stick. You're going to hold it like this, with this on the bottom, because these are just in here by pressure. That's it. And it's all print, backwards and upside down is how you actually put the type in. So this is an example. I know, Diane. Do I want to skip you too, or are you going to start over here?
You've seen it before.
This is about as large. In fact, this is as large. This is a 72-point piece of type, which equals an inch. This is as large as you can get with with lead type. And then after that, they go to wood because it's just so much lighter.
Isn't this similar to how they composed the newspapers before they went
Yes.
to digital?
Yes, really, up until the 1970s, some papers were still doing this. I actually have type from Buffalo, Wyoming, from when they were still printing on the newspaper. They were still printing that way. It's just amazing. So it hasn't changed a whole lot since Gutenberg invented it. It got a little better over time, but does that help you out there? And then I also do a lot of just general printmaking, but I really kind of came into letterpress as a calligrapher, and then moved into this, and then really moved into more printmaking after doing letterpress for so many years. So, and now everything kind of just gets thrown together.
And what classes do you teach at RMCAD?
Right now, I just teach printmaking.
Printmaking. And then talking about being in classes and teaching, you guys met, and when you were the teacher and Alicia was a student for encaustic, right? Is that?
Yes, you want to
That's
tell
great.
the story?
So I kind of had a side teaching job over at the Art Students League in Denver, and I started their encaustic program years ago, and I would offer weekend classes in learning how to paint with encaustic, and it was like a Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday or something, and Alicia was a student in the class, a participant, and I think as artists we all like to learn something new and put a new tool in our tool belt, and I won't put words in her mouth, but I think that might be why she was interested in joining, and it was a lot of fun. I had a great time, I always do, and sometime in the next year or something like that, the director came up with an idea for a collaborative show, and every instructor was to collaborate with one student of their choice, and make collaborative works that were going to be shown at the Republic Plaza in downtown Denver. And so I thought about that for a little bit, and I thought about Alicia because I don't even know if you remember, but she brought some of her letterpress, very small sheets, and she was showing me one of these, and I thought, this is exquisite. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And I still had that, and I kind of looked at that and said, wow, this is like this. I don't know what we would make, but this could be something. So I asked, and then she said, sure. And we could go on from that.
Yes, and so Nancy, I actually wanted to ask you a question based on something Alicia said, and then also go back to the whole idea of collaborations, because all three of your works that are being exhibited have that element. Mm-hmm. But you had said, you had said about like artists always wanting to kind of like try new things, mm-hmm. and as far as your background, I have the honor of being in your house, and I've kind of seen like some of the work that you've done. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you did this, and I didn't know you did this. What other kinds of mediums have you worked in?
Well, I met Alicia in a beginning book art class, I think it was, at Arvada Art Center. And then I did that for a while, and then I really got into paper making, and then studied with Ray Tomaso, and then I went to the University of Iowa for a year to study under an international paper maker. And then, you know, my mediums, I've worked in watercolor, I've worked with metal, but doing metal art, which isn't really displayed here, but that's anything found art. I like picking up things off the street in small pieces of metal and fitting them together or whatever that I see, just something that I like, or a stick that I like, and what am I going to do with it? So I've done other stick pieces, some stick baskets, a stick piece that was 6 feet high for somebody to put in their yard that was just kind of a teepee kind of shape of things. So I've always liked working with nature, whatever, rocks, and that's kind of how I got into landscape, because I loved rocks all my life, and that's what I was interested in, was working with boulders.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then I do want to talk about the sculpture that is the wire, like the wrapped wire. How long do you think it took you to wrap each, like to do that whole piece? Because when I was, it seems
It took
very
about
time
4
intensive.
hours to do that much, that long. So, I don't know, probably
What kind of yarn or thread do you use?
I used cotton and silk and wool, a little bit of everything that I just, that I found, and recycled that yarn. And I pretty much got a little bit of arthritis, I think, in my hand doing that, because I could only do it for, maybe 2 or 3 hours again, and then I have to quit.
definitely seems like a very daunting task.
Yeah,
Turned out beautifully.
I'm not sure. I think I was so inspired to have this residency and to think about something about land or Longmont land, that I think that's what kept me doing it,
Mm-hmm.
the tediousness of it.
That was actually something, because when you had applied for your residency, you did have more of the two-dimensional works, and I definitely wanted to talk about them as well. But we ended up going to your website and just seeing that, like, those three-dimensional elements. We were like, wow, there's a lot here. There's a lot, that Nancy could bring to the residency, and also, having that communication with the community when they come in would be a really great experience for everyone. And so I wanted to talk about the collaborations then, because there are 2 collaborations. One mainly is these stitched word pieces that you worked with a Longmont resident, Barry Shaw, with.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the inspiration for these, I guess?
Well, I think he was a Longmont citizen, and that was the first piece that I, thought about working with. And Sue here in the front row introduced me to her friend, and he did hundreds of drawings, and they were bright colored, and that was like experimenting for me, because most of my work has always been in neutrals. So to work with bright colors was a challenge, and then how to take something that you would never draw or do or write, and then try to overlay or integrate that work into your own. It was definitely very experimental for me to fold and work on that size or do something like that. I wouldn't do that in my own studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really works well with the other colors that you ended up choosing for the fence. Because I did notice that when we were going through your works, that most of your color choices are more of the muted colors, but then to see these colors next to those,
Yeah, it was exciting to
it
work
reads
with the
and
bright
story.
ones.
And then your other collaboration is with Warren Keating. And how did that come about? Like what was?
Well, he was a painter, and I've known him for, almost 40 years. I mean, I worked for him when he was an architect, as an interior designer, and he always, liked my work, whatever I was doing, interior design or landscape or art, and so he had stacks of just sketches, and so I took those sketches and cut out the best marks that I thought, and made it kind of an abstract piece, and then I sewed over them kind of images with them. And so he liked that idea.
Cool. Yes, and that's the lakes piece that is next to the sticks. So as far as other collaborations, since these monoprints that you did in the South Gallery, and I kind of spoke to you about this, Alicia and Patricia, and this was just kind of my impression based on the work that I had seen on your websites. So Patricia, your encaustic work seems to have such a strong sense of play with less emphasis on structure, while Alicia, typography and calligraphy deal so much in precision of line. Is that a incorrect assumption? Or as far as
I think for me, I do like to play, and I think I had I don't color inside the lines, I'm not that type of person. And I think one of the things that encaustic has served me well for many, many, many years, painting and abstraction, that it's layered. I can dig back down and pull things out, and I don't have a rigid platform that I need to stay on, other than the platform being the board, the panel. And I've also gone off that now, and because I felt like as a painter, you have a rectangle, you have a square, you have a circle. How boring! I want to do other things, so I've created stacked, a rectangle stacked with a square, stacked with a rectangle, and drawn this up. And I have a panel maker that's really skilled. I don't have that skill, and he'll just say, "Wow, I never made anything like that." Usually it's cabinets, so they come back. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, to kind of bump things up and really play.
And I'll just jump right in. I would say what I do is, I call it disciplined freedom. I think I always start with something that is very disciplined and rigid. And even my work nowadays has gone into a part where most of it is the imagery is very abstracted, but somehow it winds up in a very concise, stitched together. It's funny, Nancy and I both stitch things and they look radically different. And that's been beautiful, right? But then, I wind up always putting in something that's extremely structured. So I guess that structure, I like the structure and the play. And I probably picked up a play from Patricia after our, we didn't really know each other. Really, I came in, and actually I took 2 workshops from not just one. She was a good teacher. But, we didn't know each other real well. And at that time, I'd say my work was probably more structured. And I had so much fun with this, where we were just
we kind of let go.
Yeah. So, it was fun. And I think that really did influence me to kind of just break a little bit out of my rigid phase.
Cool. And we were talking a little earlier about the process of your collaboration. So what you did, you started with 20 blank sheets of paper, and then you split them up, 10 and 10, and then you worked on 10 and you worked on 10, then you switched.
Well, to back up just a minute.
Okay.
That's very true. Everything you said is accurate. We didn't know each other that well. We got together for coffee once or twice even, and thought, where do we start? Okay, so we're going to do a collaboration. What does that mean? Really, what does it mean? And so we both had our skill sets that we could bring to the table, but we needed to have something. So what's our content? What is this work going to be about? And so I had just returned from a residency at UCross in Wyoming, and it was my first time there. And I couldn't believe how windy it was and the weather and how it was so beautiful. I just absolutely loved it. And I was talking about that with Alicia, and she said,
I have family in Buffalo, which is not
Like,
far from
what?
us.
you know, so right there we started talking about Wyoming. Now she'd been there many, many times, and I had only been there for 4 weeks. And we just got excited talking about different experiences in Wyoming and thought, well, what else do we both like to do, you know? And then we came up with literature. We started talking about books, and so we thought, well, we'll bring some ideas out from books that we both like to read. And we emailed back and forth sentences, right? And we said, we really need to narrow this down to maybe one sentence, too, because we needed words for letterpress, and I needed words for the content, you know, to kind of rein me in a little bit. And those words really helped define the work. And then from there, yes, we did split our papers up, met after a month or so. I gave my encaustic to Alicia. She gave me her beautiful letterpress that I will be honest, very nervous to work on because it is so beautiful. I was like, woo! Yeah, it's very intimidating to do a collaboration because there's communication, you want to be playful, I guess, you know, but you also want to be professional. There's a level of trust, and we didn't know where it was going to end up when we, you know, switched our papers. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like, Nancy, the way that you created the space in the main gallery and then moving into the South Gallery, the choices you made for the artists in the South Gallery, really, Diane's not here, but if you look at her work, it is, you know, kind of like a love letter to the people that live on the land, and yours is kind of like, I guess, a love letter to the land itself. And both artists in the South Gallery work with really great textures, which is where
You know,
your
the
title
textures
comes
and the craftsmanship is just phenomenal, I think, with the art in South Gallery.
from. And I did want to ask a question. When you say you both stitch, do you mean like handwork stitch or just like stitch as in bring together?
I would say mine is stitches. So I did bookbinding for years.
Oh,
years
okay,
and
okay,
years.
yes.
And I would say go out more artist books. We have a real bookbinder right here, so Karen Jones. But so since then, my work has just, for a long time, I moved away from artist books and then kind of came back to it. But as opposed to making books, now I'm making these structures that are extremely large, but they're sewn together in order to make them larger.
Mm-hmm.
So it has all those aspects of making a book, only it's very large and the pages are very large. But it doesn't look like a book.
Very cool. Well, we are running up to 3:50, and I wanted to give everyone a chance to ask any questions of our artists. Or if their artists have any questions for me, or if anyone has questions, anyone has questions, this is the time to ask.
I want to, where can I see your book structures? Because that sounds great.
Well, I've got one up at the Philip J. Steele Gallery at on the Rimkid campus right now, in a show down there. Right now, that's it, but give me a couple months.
Do you have pictures of those at your website?
Yeah, you can get on the website. Just my name.com.
Nancy, when you collaborated with a citizen, did he just donate his paper
Yes.
to you, or did
Yes, he
you work
just-
together on making the structures?
No, he gave me his work, and I told him that I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but that I was going to create it into, you know, a bigger art piece. And I don't think he really thought of himself so much as an artist. It's just what he did that I appreciated his art. I mean, he definitely thought of himself as a poet. So I thought that the writing and, I mean, I've always love literature and writing and calligraphy, and that it would be interesting to combine the two.
So you just got to see the finished product then?
Yeah, I think he's
Yes.
seen the finished product, yeah. He hasn't really commented to me. How he feels about it.
It's kind of a nice leap of faith.
Right.
That he handed it over.
And
to
the other
everyone.
collaboration, Warren saw, and he enjoyed it. He liked the idea of us working together, that I appreciated his art because he appreciated mine. So it was just sort of a fun thing to do.
I'm looking forward to taking a closer look. I just got it.
Okay.
Well, though we don't have it here, Nancy and I did a collaboration a few years ago. It was a broken artist book. And a very different type of collaboration where we literally laid out every page together. We had just come back from a long trip to a road trip to California and did the coast of California and kind of came back. And that's all we did for, what were we, like a week, 2 weeks on the road. We just talked about the land and just how things had changed and all the things that happened, and then we came back on that trip. Much like you, just like this book just kind of came into place. It would have fit well in
Yeah. It was
Oh, it is a
all
nice
about the
book.
West.
here. A very different way of collaborating.
Yeah.
That's a
And
good
you
piece.
know, have known each other for
Probably about 30 years.
Yeah.
that's so great. And you met in a
Yeah, the
Classes.
Artist Center, Suzanne Moore Workshop. I
Yeah.
can't believe I can even remember that.
Yeah, that was amazing. And Diane's work was selected because her work is so well crafted and cut out, and she brings in paper elements into her work and sort of indigenous people that are living on the land and her representation of that. So that's kind of how she was selected.
yeah, and because she was going to be here but couldn't make it, and I was going to ask her questions because she has a specific technique of like the layering. I think it was oil pastels and the beading and the paper making
Yeah.
because the
Yeah,
hair is rolled paper.
yeah, all of it, and then she does her own framing as well. So she's really good at what she's doing.
Very cool. So we have. Does anyone else have any questions? So I guess the pig piece in the back, which is if you get a chance to look at it up close, has obviously lots of different layers of texture, and that was kind of the last piece that you worked on. Can you speak more to the meaning of that piece for you, kind of being the last piece, the end piece for your residency that you've been here for 3 months creating?
Yeah, well, that piece is handmade Western paper, the background, with walnut stain in it. And the way it came out was sort of like tree shape. So then I thought with trees, how to kind of create a forest and do, falling leaves kind of into water is what I was thinking of, like a deep forest piece. And it was interesting because we've had so much snow and ice, and usually in the wintertime I do something that feels wintry. So it was really having to look at photographs and leaves and remember, what fall is like to create the piece. And that's pretty much it. And then stitching the leaves. Everything is stitched on it.
Cool. Well, I'm going to give everyone a chance to kind of walk around, and we'll do a quick, reshuffle of the gallery and get the chairs out of the way so you guys can walk around and ask questions about specific pieces, and just kind of pick the artist's brains. I wanted to say thank you so much to the three of you. Thank you so much for coming here and speaking with me, and to everyone that has come and to join us for this artist talk. Our next artist talk, as I was saying, is March 12th, and it will be with the Skyline VPA high school students. So it will be their first artist panel, and they're all very excited for it. So if you can join us for that, that would be great. And just thank you for being here.
Thank you.